Hello everyone, and welcome to the Week 6 NFL Player Prop Show. I'm Dylan Bird, back for the second time on Sal Vetri's YouTube channel. There's nothing that gets me more excited than player props, and we got 8 more for you today. First, let's talk about last week, my debut, which didn't go so well. I went 3-6 in the props, and let's go through them right now, one by one. So looking at the list, Tyler Boyd, 5.5 receptions. I had the over, and he went under, going for 4 receptions when his over was 5.5. Then Darren Waller had 5 receptions. His over-under was 5.5, and I had the over, so I lost that one as well, starting 0-2. Then Baker Mayfield, I had under 246.5 passing yards, and he had 247 total passing yards in the game, going over by just a half, which is pretty ridiculous. I got screwed there. Then I had Kareem Hunt, over 65.5 rushing yards. He had in the low 70s. However, I believe if you bet Hunt the day of the game, his over-under was around 74.5. You may have lost if you bet the over there, if you bet it the day of the game, because I believe he had 72 rushing yards. It's all because Dearness Johnson ran out the clock on the last drive and not Kareem Hunt, so people could have gotten screwed over there. However, at the time I made my picks on Friday, it was 65.5 on Monkey Knife Fight, so counted as a win, over for Kareem Hunt. Then we had DeAndre Hopkins, over under 7.5 receptions. I had the over. He did hit the under. We had Robbie Anderson, over 5.5 receptions, which he hit. You know, the Falcons defense is just so bad. He absolutely destroyed that. We had Dalvin Cook, under 88.5 rushing yards. Now, the thing with this one is that if you were betting it the day of the game, his total lowered to around 77.5. So I told people, you know, if you don't feel comfortable taking the Dalvin Cook under at a number that low compared to what I said at 88.5, then you could just go and take James Robinson over 20.5. Now, the replacement pick, James Robinson, did go over, and Dalvin Cook actually did go under, bailed out by that groin injury that held him out the rest of the game. So we'll count the Dalvin Cook as a win, and if you took James Robinson because I tweeted it out, congratulations, you hit that as well. Then we had Chris Carson, over 68.5 rushing yards, which he did not hit. And then for our last pick of the slate, we had Justin Jefferson, over 63.5 receiving yards. I picked the wrong guy. Adam Thielen went off. Justin Jefferson did not. The under did hit. So 3-6 in my debut. It's a major bounce back week this week, and I'm really, really excited to get going here. Before we get started, if you don't already, you could follow me on Twitter at sports_bird. Also, I have my own brand new YouTube channel, SportsBird. I make my waiver wire pickup video on Tuesdays and then make my college football betting picks video on Fridays. So that's released over there. Be sure to subscribe to that. And be sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. It really helps me out. It really helps Sal out. Be sure to do that if you haven't already. Now, all these player props we're going to talk about today are from Monkey Knife Fight, the sponsor of this NFL Week 6 player prop show. You go onto Monkey Knife Fight and they'll match your deposit 100% up to $50 with promo code VETRI, VETRI. If you love prop betting, Monkey Knife Fight is an amazing place to take advantage of this great deposit bonus. So be sure to do that. Go onto Monkey Knife Fight and make your deposit and they will match it up to $50. So now let's get right to it with our player props. As I said before, I have 8 props for you today, but be sure to follow me on Twitter at sports_bird because I may make adjustments or add a few picks right up to game time depending on injuries, depending on guys who are going to be limited in the game. We'll have to see what happens, but be sure to be following me there because I will update my picks right before the games start on Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So the first prop that we're going to talk about today is Adam Thielen, his line at 6.5 receptions for this game. Now last weekend, Sunday Night Football, Adam Thielen absolutely killed it. I picked the wrong guy in Justin Jefferson last week to go off. It turned out that Thielen went off, and he absolutely destroyed the weak Seahawks defense, and he's lucky enough to get a very easy matchup this week in the Atlanta Falcons, who Robbie Anderson destroyed last week when I took his over in receptions. Now, Adam Thielen has the second highest matchup advantage out of all wide receivers this week as he matches up with the rookie A.J. Terrell from Clemson. 49% matchup advantage on the game. He's first in target share in the NFL at 33.1%. He also has 29 receptions this year. He's Pro Football Focus's top graded wide receiver. He's been unreal this year. It's as simple as that. Adam Thielen has been absolutely unreal. A complete bounce back from his injury-riddled season in 2019, and it's great to see. And as I said, we saw him shred a bad defense in Seattle. We saw Robbie Anderson shred Atlanta last week. I like Adam Thielen to go over 6.5 receptions in this game. I think he's going to go absolutely off. Of course, knowing me, watch Justin Jefferson go off now that I bet Thielen, but we're betting Thielen over 6.5 receptions. I do feel pretty good about this one. The next line we're going to talk about today is Todd Gurley's rushing yards total, which is over under 63.5 rushing yards. Now, Todd Gurley was a guy that I absolutely despised going into the season after what happened last year with him averaging under 4 yards per carry. It was pretty brutal to watch. It looked like his career was coming to a close. The Falcons picked him up. Some people were high on him. Some people were low on him. I was extremely low on him. I did not trust him to get through the season. I even said in my waiver wire video a few weeks ago that I expected Brian Hill to take over midseason. Well, guess what? Todd Gurley has proved me wrong. He's playing some of the best football that he has in the last few years. The Vikings come in ranking 31st in run defense. Todd Gurley has had 2 games over this number, 63.5 out of 5 this season. He went 14 carries for 121 yards rushing last week. As I said, Gurley is playing unreal right now. He has 4 breakaway runs on the season, which is tied 3rd. This means that Todd Gurley has 4 runs over 15 yards on the season so far. He's also 4th in rushing yards in the NFL with 375, averaging 75 per game. He averages 15.8 carries per game. So if you round that up to 16, that means you're basically betting on him to go over 4 yards per carry in this game. And against the bottom 2 rushing defense in the NFL, I trust Todd Gurley to do that. I'm taking Todd Gurley's over 63.5 rushing yards. The third player prop that we're going to talk about today is Baker Mayfield's passing yards total, which is at 239.5. I know what you're saying. Don't do it again. Don't do it again. You're not going to take his under again, aren't you? Yes, I am. The Browns have a minus 46% pass blocking advantage this week against the Steelers, and the Browns are the team that ranks best in pass blocking in the NFL, which just gives you an idea of how good the Steelers defense is. The Steelers rank 1st in pass rush, 1st in pressure rate. They aren't as good in coverage, but I believe that pass rush and the pressure rate are really going to affect Baker Mayfield. Baker's only averaging 195.2 passing yards per game. He's had 1 game over 239.5 thus far this year, and that was last week when I bet his under. He had 247 yards total. I don't think Baker could put up that number again, let alone against the best defense in the NFL potentially in the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're lethal. I like the Steelers to win this game in general. I also like Baker Mayfield to go under 239.5 passing yards. We'll see what happens. I don't think Baker could do it again. I really don't. The fourth player prop that we're going to talk about today is Kenny Galladay's receiving yards total, which is over under 75.5 receiving yards. So, to start off, Kenny Galladay has the highest matchup advantage in the NFL out of all wide receivers this week. He has a 52% matchup advantage according to Pro Football Focus over Chris Claybrooks of the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jags have allowed a player over 75.5 receiving yards the last 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago it was Tyler Boyd, and last week, as we remember, Brandon Cooks absolutely exploded onto the scene, catching 8 passes for 161 yards and 2 touchdowns against Jacksonville. Jacksonville's pass defense is really not good at all. They rank 22nd in coverage, and they are 29th in passing yards allowed per game at 280. In addition, the Lions have a 31% pass blocking advantage this week, which means Stafford's going to have plenty of time to throw, plenty of time for Kenny Galladay to get open. I think Kenny Galladay goes over 75.5 receiving yards this week. He hasn't really had an explosion game yet this year. He's had 2 solid games, Kenny Galladay. This is his explosion week, over 75.5 receiving yards. The fifth prop we're going to talk about today, we head to Aaron Jones over under 65.5 rushing yards. Now, the Bucs come in ranking as one of the best defenses in the NFL. They are 7th against the run. However, the Packers have a 14% run blocking advantage this week. In addition, Aaron Jones is averaging 93.5 yards on the ground per game. That is a 28-yard disparity between his rushing average and the player prop here. So this is just way too big of a disparity for me to pass up on. I cannot believe that this is actually the line. I was in shock when I saw it. Maybe it's a trap, that could be it. But for me, if you're going to have a 28-yard difference between what the player is averaging and the actual prop, I'm going to take that every single time. That's what I'm doing here. I like Aaron Jones over 65.5 rushing yards per game. Like I said, he's just too good for that prop. Like, there are some players that you could slow down. There are some players who are going to have the worst weeks against the great run defenses. Aaron Jones is a guy that I think is matchup proof. He's just that good. He's been absolutely unreal this season. If he continues like this, he's going to finish as a top 2 back in fantasy football, undoubtedly. He's too good to be held under 65.5, which is why I like the over 65.5 rushing yards. The next player prop that we're going to talk about today is Jimmy Garoppolo's passing yard total, which is at 263.5. Jimmy Garoppolo is fresh right off the bench, coming off that horrible performance against the Miami Dolphins, where he did get benched for CJ Beathard in the second half. What an absolutely brutal return from injury for Jimmy Garoppolo. He had that sprained ankle, he missed a few weeks, and he comes back to what is supposed to be a relatively easy matchup for him in the Miami Dolphins, and he just absolutely was horrible to the point where he got benched for CJ Beathard. Like, that's absolutely brutal. And looking at this week, it's not going to get much easier for Jimmy G. He faces a Rams defense that ranks 4th in coverage and 6th in pass rush. He has not cleared this 265.5 passing yard number all year. As I said, he got benched last week. He has not proved much at all to me this year, and I would not be surprised if the 49ers consider moving on in the future beyond the season. I don't think Garoppolo is going to be their long-term quarterback in years to come. That being said, also, the 49ers have a minus 35% pass blocking advantage this week, but they do have a 14% run blocking advantage, which makes me think they're going to rely on guys like Raheem Mostert and Jerick McKinnon in the running game, rather than having Jimmy Garoppolo air the ball out a ton. So I like Jimmy Garoppolo under 263.5 passing yards for this Sunday night football game against the Los Angeles Rams. The 7th player prop that we're going to talk about today is Stefon Diggs' reception total at 5.5. So, this is another number that just made me go, what? Like, I don't understand how Stefon Diggs' total is this low at 5.5. I mean, he's having an absolutely unreal year. Now, he doesn't have a great matchup. He's matching up with Travarius Ward of the Chiefs, who Diggs only has a 9% matchup advantage against. However, Diggs is averaging 10.2 targets per game. He has 51 total targets on the season, which ranks 4th in the NFL. He has 36 receptions on the season, which ranks 3rd in the NFL. And Diggs has cleared this 5.5 number every single week, except for the 1 week where he played the Rams and had Jalen Ramsey on him. Look, I think the Bills are going to have to throw a lot in this game against the Chiefs in order to win. We saw the Raiders put on an absolute clinic and drop 40 on the Chiefs. I think that the Bills are going to have to do a similar thing. Where they're going to have to score that many points in order to win this game. And even if they're losing by a lot, they're still going to have to throw to try and get back in the game. I think the Bills are going to come out motivated this week after getting absolutely throttled by the Tennessee Titans. I think it's going to be a pretty close game, but I think there's going to be a lot of passing from Josh Allen and the Bills. And as a result, Stefon Diggs is going to go over this number, over 5.5 receptions on the game. Again, just like the Jones bet, this is just too much of a disparity for me to pass up. Diggs has been shattering this number pretty much every game. He had 10 receptions on Tuesday Night Football the other night. I like him to go over 5.5 receptions in this game against the Chiefs. Our last player prop, we are going to look at a guy that we took last week and lost on. DeAndre Hopkins of the Arizona Cardinals at over under 88.5 receiving yards in this Monday Night Football game against the Dallas Cowboys. It's a huge number, without a doubt. But DeAndre Hopkins is averaging 105.6 receiving yards a game. He's had over 130 receiving yards in 3 out of the 5 games this year. His 53 targets on the season ranks 3rd in the NFL. And is Dallas really going to be the one to stop him? Dallas has not stopped anybody this year. In 4 out of the 5 games Dallas has played this year, they've allowed a receiver to go over 88.5 receiving yards. We saw it with Robert Woods, we saw it with Calvin Ridley, we saw it with DK Metcalf, and we saw it last week with Darius Slayton. Wide receivers feast against the Dallas Cowboys. Their secondary has not been able to do anything this year, and the one game that they were able to keep a receiver under 88.5 receiving yards was when Odell Beckham had 3 touchdowns against them. So yeah, they only held Odell to 81 yards, which is barely holding him to under that. But Odell scored 3 touchdowns against them. realistically, the Dallas Cowboys cannot hold any receivers, and I do not expect them to hold who I consider to be the best receiver in the NFL. In addition, DeAndre Hopkins has a 25% matchup advantage over Cowboys corner Daryl Worley, according to Pro Football Focus, and all this information tells me that I like the over here. DeAndre Hopkins over 88.5 receiving yards on this Monday Night Football game. And that's a wrap on the NFL Week 6 Player Prop Show. Be sure to comment on this video telling me your favorite NFL prop of Week 6. I will tell you if I agree with you. I'll tell you if I disagree with you. Be sure to ask me any prop questions either in the comment section below, or be sure to tweet at me at sports_bird and ask me any prop questions, any betting questions, any fantasy questions. I'll be around to answer them. In addition, really make sure you're following me on Twitter, because I will probably add a few more picks right before game time on Sunday, because the lines will be changing, the injury news will be out, and we'll get a few more options in terms of props, whether that's running back receiving yards, which is a prop that I love to bet. I don't have any of them on here right now, but I may be adding them like I did with Robinson last week. Also, QB rushing yards is another thing I would love to look at. So these things will be added Saturday night, Sunday morning. I will be sure to look at them and add any picks if necessary. Also, if you haven't liked this video yet, be sure to like it. Be sure to subscribe to this channel. It really helps me. It really helps Sal. Also, be sure to subscribe to my brand new YouTube channel, SportsBird. And goodbye and good luck with your player props this week. I'm hoping it'll be a bounce back week for me.